To follow along with most of the videos on Build a Module, you're going to need a Drupal site to test on. With some of our cross-platform video collections like PHP Programming Basics, you won't need Drupal, but you'll still need a web environment. The simplest way I've found to get a web environment set up for Mac or Windows is to use a program called Dev Desktop. And so in a moment, we're going to demonstrate how to use that, as well as how to leverage another program called XAMPP for Linux. However, before we get started, let me mention a couple of other options for following along. First of all, you can use an existing site. Doing this is actually a great way to map what you're learning on Build a Module to what you need to accomplish in the real world. What you see on your screen will often be a bit different than what you see in the videos, so that adds a bit of a challenge, but the challenge is usually worth the added learning opportunities. If you take this approach, it's very important that you back up your site first so that you can roll back any changes you make to your files or your database. Also, keep in mind that working on a copy of your site that exists on your computer is going to be faster and easier than working on a hosted site, since you'll have direct access to the files. As a second option, you can use a hosted Drupal site. If you're borrowing a computer or you don't have permission to install a web environment on your machine, then this might be your only solution for getting started. It's a bit tougher to work with a hosted site because depending on the service that you use, you'll need to know how to use FTP or Git in order to upload and edit files. But if you're just site building with Drupal and you don't need access to the file system, a hosted solution is pretty quick to set up. Both the Acquia Cloud and Pantheon services offer free hosted testing environments, and if you have a more general web hosting account, most of those offer one-click installers of Drupal as well. As a third, but more complicated option, you can use a virtual machine. This typically means that you'll use a tool like Vagrant to spin up a copy of Linux on your computer with a complete Drupal installation ready to go. For developers, this is often an ideal solution because it's possible to completely emulate most of the variables that come into play with a production site. But it's also one of the most problematic because it requires additional experience in configuring and troubleshooting a whole other layer of tools. So if you've never used something like Vagrant and are working on your own, I'd usually suggest going with a simpler option. However, if you manage a team of developers, then it's worth looking into technologies like Vagrant and Ansible for helping your team get consistent environments set up. As a final alternative to using Dev Desktop, you can use other stack installers or piece together the technologies that the stack installers install for you, but do it all yourself. Keep in mind that Drupal requires Apache or Nginx for the server. It can use a variety of databases, MySQL and MariaDB being the most common, and it also needs PHP. There are also some alternative stack installers like XAMPP, which works across Linux, Mac, and Windows, WAMP for Windows, and MAMP, which is pretty popular for Mac. If you're following along with one of our cross-platform video collections, then you can simply install Drupal using one of the tools that we just mentioned, and then remove the Drupal file structure out of that directory and leave it empty for your examples. Okay, let's look at how to get a site set up quick so you can start learning.